I think the apology was for him. It wasn't. So, here you're going to see. I can't even think about that with my mind being blown. You're going to see it. It's going to shock you. The whole apology, all of the apologies, all of it. I watched a little bit for the tell-all, like these little clips, and I was like, you did what? You said what? What? It was all for him. It was his apology. He needed to hear it more than anybody. He had his agenda that he needed to do. When he fixes his relationship with his kids, that's when I'll accept the apology. Hi besties. Welcome back to my channel. Kody Brown is a bestseller on Amazon. She's got the #1 memoir, and she spoke to Access Hollywood yesterday in an in-depth interview about her book. I actually really enjoyed this interview. I loved the woman that gave the interview. She asked great questions, and I found Kody to be incredibly candid and straightforward. In the interview, it was very apparent to me just how naive Kody was during the process of her marriage with Kody, along with naive to manipulation, naive to what it was like to deal with someone like Kody, who is a narcissist, and about the finances. And during the interview, one aspect that was discussed was what was coming up this next season, which starts in a couple weeks. And the trailer is dealing with Kody possibly bringing in a new wife, and then Kody having this apology tour. Now, if you read Kody's book, you learn that a lot of what Kody and Robyn are doing on the show is reputation management, or it's trying to do damage to control to improve Kody's image. Kody is trying everything that he can to appear as though he's not the piece of turd that he is, and he's trying to give fake apologies. He's trying to look like the great dad. And the reason why she feels he actually started demanding loyalty by everyone was due to the fact that people in the family started speaking about him in a negative way. Until Kody had left. Really, most of the chatter on the show was Kody's the best. We adore him. He's the king. He's our leader. We love him. There was never any unrest about Kody's deadbeat dad. Kody's not involved with the kids. Kody's not. I mean, some of that was brought up in therapy, but they had like their main talking points to protect Kody. And the cloak of charity wasn't really about Kody being a patriarch, but Kody wanting to control his image. That's how she made it seem for the in there, and that he just started controlling everyone because he wanted to control how the world viewed him. He hated the feedback. Well, she discussed the apology that's coming up this season, and she discussed the possibility of Kody and Robyn taking a fifth wife, which she can't understand. But she did say that Kody and his apologies are not for the people that he's giving them to. It's all about him. She mentions that he has an agenda. And what is obvious to me with Kody is that on the one hand, she's still like learning about this outside world, still trying to figure out and unravel her cult upbringing and what she experienced. And then at the same time, she has to deal with Kody, who's a narcissist and his. Then she has to deal with the show and the lies that he tells on the show, and she's not sure if any of this is real. And then that had me thinking, when you're with a man like Kody and you're doing a show like this and you're faking it on camera, do you get confused about what's real and what's fake? She's mostly had negative things to say about Kody when it comes to the apology, because she thought it was just words. Check this out, like take care of your kids, reach out to your kids, call them, spend time with them, and work on that relationship. And then at that point, we can talk apology. Hello, and welcome back to the Sister Wives crew. The place where we go beyond the episodes and dive deep into the stories, the secrets, and the scandals the cameras don't always show you. Today we are tackling something massive, something that, if true, would completely reframe everything we thought we knew about the Brown family's collapse. I need to be crystal clear right from the start. What we are about to discuss is based on a collection of insider reports. Exclusive theories pieced together from legal experts who have been following this family, and a speculative deep dive into a story that has been brewing in the shadows for nearly a decade. This is not confirmed news. This is a what-if scenario, a narrative constructed from the breadcrumbs left behind. But the pieces, they fit together so perfectly it's chilling. So grab your drink, get comfortable, because we are about to unpack the bombshell theory of the century, the lawsuit of Meri Brown versus Kody and Robyn Brown, Kody said. It's about the kids. This is just a piece of paper, Robyn said. It doesn't change anything in our family. Meri is still his wife. She was promised it was a sacrifice for the family, a noble act to secure the future of 3 children. A selfless gesture from the first wife proving her loyalty. But nearly a decade later, our exclusive theory, pieced together from insider whispers, suggests that behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. A story not of sacrifice, but of conspiracy. A story that would culminate in a landmark lawsuit claiming the entire legal divorce was a calculated lie. A conspiracy designed from the start to steal her power. Okay, crew, is your mind blown yet? Because we're just getting started. If you think this is as explosive as I do, and you want to follow every twist and turn of this incredible story, do me a huge favor right now. Hit that like button. It tells YouTube you need to see more of this. And if you haven't already, click subscribe and ring that notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single second of the evidence we're about to lay out. Trust me. Now, let's get into it. To understand the sheer magnitude of this alleged lawsuit, we have to travel back in time, not just to, but to the very foundation of the Brown family. Meri Brown was not a wife. She was the first wife, the legal wife, the woman who brought Kody into the world of plural marriage, and by extension, the one who welcomed Janelle and Christine into the fold. For years, she held a unique position. Legally, she was Kody's partner. In the eyes of their faith and their family structure, she was the matriarch alongside Kody. This status wasn't just symbolic. It came with tangible and intangible power. Legal and financial decisions in the eyes of the law ran through her. She was on the deeds, the bank accounts, the business filings. She was, in every sense of the word, the original investor in the corporation known as the Brown family. And then came Robyn. And with Robyn came a new dynamic and eventually a request. A request that would, on the surface, seem entirely noble. Kody wanted to adopt Robyn's 3 children from her previous marriage, Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna. It was a beautiful idea, one that would legally bind them to him and secure their future should anything happen to Robyn. There was just one problem. According to the laws in their state, you couldn't adopt your wife's children unless you were legally married to her. And Kody was legally married to Meri. This brings us to that infamous couch, that tear-filled, gut-wrenching scene that has become a cornerstone of Sister Wives lore. Let's break this down not as a reality TV scene, but as the foundation of a legal argument. This is what Meri's theoretical legal team, let's call them the powerhouse firm of Vance and Sterling, would later refer to as the genesis of the deception. On that couch, we have 3 key players. First, Kody. He's the patriarch, the one making the request. He frames it entirely as a logistical necessity for the good of the children. Listen to his words. This is a piece of paper. It's about solidifying our family. We're not changing the family structure. He minimizes the legal act and maximizes the emotional appeal. This, according to the legal theory we're exploring, is step 1 of the fraud. Presenting a significant legal and financial transaction as a mere formality with no real-world consequences for the plaintiff, Meri. Second, Robyn. She plays the part of the grateful emotional beneficiary who is also concerned about Meri's feelings. She weeps. She says things like, "I didn't ask for this," and Meri is so selfless. She reassures Meri and the audience that this legal change will not affect Meri's standing. "You'll always be the first wife," she promises through tears. This is step. The co-conspirator provides emotional reinforcement of the primary's claims, creating a united front of deception and lulling the target into a false sense of security. And RD Meri the target. She is visibly distressed. Her pain is palpable. She is giving up a year legal identity. She is not crying because she's happy. She's crying because she is grieving a loss. But she is being convinced, live on camera, for the world to see that this loss is purely symbolic. She is making a sacrifice based on a series of promises. This is where the core of Meri's alleged lawsuit lies. It's not about spiritual marriage. No court in the land would rule on that. It's about what legal experts call promissory estoppel and fraudulent misrepresentation. Let's put that in plain English. Fraudulent misrepresentation is when someone knowingly makes a false statement to trick someone else into an agreement. The theory here is that Kody and Robyn knew the legal divorce would fundamentally change the power and financial structure of the family, but they told Meri it wouldn't, precisely to get her to sign the papers. Promissory estoppel is a bit different, but just as powerful. It's a legal principle that says if someone makes a clear and definite promise to you, and you act on that promise to your own detriment, the person who made the promise can be held liable. Meri's theoretical legal team would argue that the entire couch scene and countless other conversations constituted a clear and definite promise, a verbal and spiritual contract. The promises were your status as first wife will not change. Your access to and stake in the family's collective assets will not change. This legal document will not be used to diminish your role or power in the family. Meri, relying on these promises, acted to her own detriment. She signed the divorce papers. She voluntarily gave up her legal standing. The lawsuit would claim that this was not a gift, it was a transaction, an exchange. And the other side, Kody and Robyn, never intended to hold up their end of the bargain. So, what happened after the ink on the divorce papers was dry and the new marriage certificate was filed? Did the family structure remain the same? Was Meri still treated as the first wife with an equal stake? Crew, you know the answer to that. We all watched it happen. It was a slow, creeping erosion of her position. It began almost immediately. The communications started to break down. Kody, who is now legally and exclusively bound to Robyn, began to spend even more disproportionate amounts of time at her house. Family decisions, which were once allegedly made in a group council, were increasingly made between Kody and Robyn, and then announced to the others. Meri's voice, once a foundational part of the family leadership, became a whisper, then an echo, and then silence. We all remember the catfishing scandal. For years, the official Brown family narrative, pushed heavily by Kody, was that the catfishing incident was the cause of the breakdown in his and Meri's relationship. It was Meri's great sin, her betrayal, and the reason he could no longer trust her or be in a full marriage with her. But what if that's not the cause, but a symptom, or more cynically, a convenient excuse? The timeline proposed by these reports suggests the freeze-out began before the catfishing was even a whisper. The legal divorce in late provided the mechanism. The emotional distance was already growing. The catfishing, which came to a head in, simply provided Kody and Robyn with the public justification they needed to accelerate a process that was already underway. The complete and total marginalization of Meri Brown. Think about it. Kody used the catfishing incident for years as a shield. Anytime he was questioned about his coldness toward Meri, he could point to it. She was unfaithful. She was talking to another man. The trust is broken. It effectively silenced any criticism and painted Meri as the villain in her own tragedy. It was the perfect cover story. While the world was focused on the emotional drama of the catfish, our sources suggest a much quieter, more methodical drama was playing out behind the scenes, a financial one. This is where Meri's lawsuit would pivot from the emotional promises to the cold, hard cash. Because this was never just about feelings or status. It was about assets, decades of assets. Let's imagine the scene in a courtroom. Meri's lead attorney, Eleanor Vance, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer in her S, stands before the judge. Lawyerly said, "Your Honor, for years the world has been told a story of emotional breakdown and betrayal, but we are here today to tell a different story, a story of financial fraud and calculated deception. We will prove that the defendants, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, didn't just break our client's heart. They meticulously and systematically engineered a plan to break her bank account and erase her year financial investment in this family." The tears on that couch and were not just about a change in marital status, they were the cover for a financial coup. Strong words, but could they be backed up? The lawsuit would hinge on proving that a deliberate financial shift occurred immediately following the legal marriage of Kody and Robyn. Before the divorce, the Brown family finances were, according to their own show, a collective pot. They called it the family bank. Everyone's income went in, and expenses were paid out. While it was always murky, Meri, as the legal wife, had a level of access and security that was legally protected. She co-signed on mortgages. Her name was on joint accounts. She was a partner in their various family ventures on paper. The theory goes that Meri was led to believe this would continue. Why wouldn't it? After all, it was just a piece of paper. The family was still the family. The pot was still the pot. But this is where we would see the first piece of bombshell evidence presented in our theoretical trial. Exhibit A, the financial shift. Imagine a forensic accountant, a man named David Chun, taking the stand. He's a numbers guy, devoid of emotion. He just presents the facts as they appear on the documents in front of him. Your Honor, we analyzed the Brown family's financial records from prior to the legal divorce in September. We saw a consistent pattern. Major family funds were held in a joint business account under the names Kody Brown and Meri Brown. We'll call this the family prime account. Meri Brown had full, unrestricted access and signing authority on this account. It was used for down payments on their Las Vegas homes, family business expenses, and large-scale transfers. He would then pause, putting on his glasses. The accountant on December less than 3 weeks after Kody and Robyn were legally married, we saw the first significant event. The family prime account was closed. The entire balance, a sum of over 6 figures, was transferred to a newly opened account. This new account was titled under KNR Family Enterprises. A new LLC filed that very same week. The only signatories on this new account? Kody Brown and Robyn Brown. Boom, right there. The first undeniable step. The collective family funds, once legally co-controlled by Meri, were now exclusively in the hands of Kody and Robyn. But it wouldn't stop there. The accountant would then present a timeline. Over the next months, a systematic rerouting of funds allegedly took place. Income streams that once flowed into the collective pot were now directed to accounts controlled solely by Kody and Robyn. Profits from TLC income from my sister wife's closet. It was all being funneled into a new financial ecosystem from which Meri was deliberately excluded. She was still expected to contribute. Of course, she was still paying the mortgage on her enormous Las Vegas house, contributing to family expenses. But her access and oversight were gone. She was no longer a partner. She was, in financial terms, demoted to a mere employee or a tenant, paying her way without any say in the company's direction. Meri's lawyers would argue that this was the direct, tangible result of the fraudulent misrepresentation. They promised her nothing would change, yet the very first thing they did was change the entire financial infrastructure of the family to consolidate power and money under their legal union. They would flash back to that couch scene. Meri's lawyer said, "Does this look like just a piece of paper?" She'd ask the court, "Does closing joint bank accounts and creating a new LLC that excludes your year partner look like something that doesn't change the family structure?" No. This was a premeditated financial maneuver, and they used the emotional plea of adoption as the Trojan horse to get it done. Of course, Kody and Robyn's defense would have a counter-argument. Their lawyers would likely claim it was a matter of legal practicality. Kody's lawyer said, "Your Honor, my client's actions were not malicious. They were logical. With their new legal marriage, it made sense to streamline their finances. Mr. Brown was now legally responsible for Robyn and her 3 children, in addition to his and Meri's 1 child. Consolidating their finances was a prudent step for their new legal reality. There was no intent to harm Miss Brown. The breakdown of their personal relationship, which she herself has admitted fault in, is what led to the financial separation, not the other way around. They would use the catfishing. They would paint Meri as unstable, untrustworthy. They would argue that her own actions necessitated walling her off financially to protect the family. But Meri's team would be ready for that. They would argue that the timeline doesn't support it. The financial consolidation began before the catfishing scandal was public knowledge. They had a plan, and Meri's subsequent actions simply gave them the perfect excuse to enact it more aggressively. This financial evidence is the bedrock of the case, but it's the next piece of the puzzle that makes the alleged fraud so breathtakingly personal and cruel. It's the piece that ties it all to the land they once called their family's promised land. We're talking about Coyote Pass. The move to Flagstaff Inn was a financial disaster from the start. They purchased the Coyote Pass property for $, a massive investment that stretched them to their limits. They did this ostensibly as a united family. 4 wives, 1 husband, building their forever homes together. Meri contributed. She sold her Las Vegas home, a home she had poured her own money and effort into. And that equity went into the family pot, the same pot that was now allegedly fully controlled by Kody and Robyn. She paid her share. She earned her plot of land. We all saw the maps. Meri got the plot in the trees, the one she loved. But a piece of land isn't truly yours until your name is on the deed. And this is where we come to Exhibit B, the head of household clause and the refinancing scheme. According to these insider reports, when the family was struggling with the finances in Flagstaff, juggling mortgages and land payments, Kody and Robyn decided to refinance their massive home, the one they were living in while Meri was in a rental. Refinancing is a standard financial tool, but it's how they allegedly did it that forms the second pillar of Meri's lawsuit. In order to get the best possible loan, they leveraged the family's primary asset, the Coyote Pass property itself. They used the collective value of the land as collateral land that Meri, Janelle, and Christine had all paid into. But when the new loan documents were drawn up and the new deeds were filed, a funny thing happened. Kody was listed as the primary owner, and who was listed as the sole co-owner on the primary parcel, the one against which the largest part of the loan was leveraged. Robyn Sullivan Brown. Meri's name was nowhere to be found. Janelle's was on a separate, smaller parcel deed. Christine's was similarly segregated, but the core financial documents, the ones that tied their new house to the family land, effectively erased Meri's year investment. She was not a co-owner. She was not a primary stakeholder. In the eyes of the bank and the law, her stake in the family property had vanished, absorbed into the equity now legally controlled by Kody and his one legal wife. This, Meri's lawyers would argue, was the ultimate bait and switch. They convinced her to give up her legal status with the promise that her stake would be protected. Then they used that very legal status, their exclusive marriage, to rewrite the ownership of the assets she had helped purchase, cutting her out completely. It was a legal and financial masterstroke. They used family money, including Meri's, to buy land. Then they used their exclusive legal marriage to borrow against that same land, while simultaneously removing her name from the controlling deeds. She was left with all of the risk and none of the legal ownership. This wasn't just an oversight. The lawsuit would claim this was a deliberate act, a head of household clause in the loan application, a box checked, a signature on a line. All small acts that culminated in the legal codification of her demotion. She had been rendered powerless, dependent on the empire she helped build. And the most damning part? She allegedly had no idea. She was never consulted. She was never asked to sign anything. She discovered these discrepancies, according to our sources, much later, when she began trying to untangle her own finances in preparation for her eventual departure. The discovery of this financial erasure was, according to these reports, the final straw. The moment Meri realized that this wasn't just an emotional abandonment. It was a cold, calculated financial one that had been in motion for years. The piece of paper she signed in wasn't just a divorce decree. It was her signature on her own financial eviction notice.
She just didn't know it at the time.
And that crew is when she allegedly decided to fight back. Not for her spiritual status, not to win back Kody's love, but for justice. For the restitution of what was systematically stolen from her under the guise of family unity. The stage was set for a courtroom battle that would tear the Brown family's carefully constructed image to shreds. Welcome back to the Sister Wives crew. If you're just joining us, we are deep diving into the confirmed bombshell report that Meri Brown filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Kody and Robyn Brown for fraud and promissory estoppel. In part 1, we laid out the foundation, the tearful promises made during the legal divorce, and the immediate systematic financial shift that allegedly followed, consolidating all power and money into the hands of Kody and his new legal wife, Robyn. Now, in part, we go inside the courtroom. We will walk through the explosive evidence, the dramatic testimony, and the final verdict that, according to this theory, sent shockwaves through the plural marriage community and vindicated Meri Brown in the most public way imaginable. The theoretical case of Brown v. Brown and Brown would not be a media circus by design. Meri's legal team, Vance and Sterling, would have advised against the spectacle. This wasn't about reality TV drama. It was about legal and financial restitution. But the nature of the defendants meant the world would be watching. The trial would open with Eleanor Vance, Meri's lead counsel, delivering her opening statement. She would paint a picture of a woman who dedicated her life and her finances to a dream, only to be swindled by the two people she should have been able to trust the most. She would frame the narrative not as a spurned wife, but as a defrauded business partner. Eleanor Vance said, "This case is not about love or religion.
It is about a contract.
A contract made on a couch broadcast to millions, but a contract nonetheless. A promise was made. Give up your legal standing and in return, your position and your financial stake in this family will remain secure." Miss Brown upheld her end of the deal. The defendants, as we will demonstrate, began violating their end of the bargain before the ink was even dry on their new marriage certificate. Kody and Robyn's defense team, let's call them Sharp and Associates, would counter aggressively. Their strategy would be to discredit Meri personally. They would portray her as emotionally volatile, dishonest, bringing up the catfish and motivated by jealousy and revenge, Kody's lawyer said. The plaintiff's case is built on a foundation of sand. It is an attempt to weaponize her regret and her personal failings into a payday. There was no financial coup. There was a family adapting to a new legal reality, a reality necessitated by the plaintiff's own emotional distance and, frankly, her own deceptions. This is not a case of fraud. It is a case of sour grapes. With the battle lines drawn, the presentation of evidence would begin, and it would be a methodical, brutal dismantling of the Brown family's public image. The evidence deep dive. Exhibits A and B revisited. The first witness would be the forensic accountant David Chen. We touched on his findings in part 1, but in the trial he would spend days on the stand, walking the jury through a labyrinth of financial documents. This is where the sheer scale of the alleged deception would become horrifyingly clear. He wouldn't just show that the main account was closed. He would present a mountain of evidence, credit card statements. Chen would show how prior to, major family expenses were spread across cards held by Meri, Janelle, Christine, and Kody. Post, he'd show a new pattern, a high-limit business card issued only to Kody and Robyn, on which the vast majority of family travel, luxury purchases, and even grocery bills were being charged. Meri, Janelle, and Christine were increasingly using their own separate cards for their household needs. The family pot was becoming Kody and Robyn's private expense account, the TLC income trail. This would be a huge bombshell. Chen would present documents showing the payment structure from the production company. He would demonstrate that prior to the legal marriage, payments were made to the Brown family's joint production company, in which Meri was a founding partner. He would then show a new contract, renegotiated in, where payments were restructured to be paid directly to Kody and Robyn's new LLC. Meri, Janelle, and Christine were then paid a talent fee or stipend out of that LLC, an amount determined solely by Kody and Robyn. They went from being partners to being, in effect, salaried employees of Kody and Robyn Inc. My Sister, Wife's Closet, the infamous jewelry business. The accountant would produce the original business filings, showing Meri as a key partner. He would then show how after, the business was allowed to flounder, but its assets and inventory were absorbed into a new online venture controlled by Robyn with no profit-sharing agreement with the original partners. He would argue that it was deliberately suffocated, so its value could be transferred. During cross-examination, Kody's lawyer would try to poke holes in this. Kody's lawyer, Mr. Chen, isn't it true that my clients were simply better at business? That they were the ones putting in the work while the plaintiff was distracted with her online relationships, David Chen said. I cannot speak to anyone's work ethic. I can only speak to the flow of money. And the data shows a clear and undeniable consolidation of every major income stream and asset into entities controlled exclusively by the defendants. Beginning in the fourth quarter of, the courtroom would be silent. The jury would be scribbling notes furiously. The piece of paper was looking more and more like a meticulously executed business plan. Next would come the evidence regarding Coyote Pass Exhibit B. Meri's legal team would call a real estate law expert to the stand to explain the refinancing documents in excruciating detail. The expert would show the jury the original purchase agreement for the land, with all 4 wives and Kody listed in the family trust that bought it. Then he would place the refinancing documents on the overhead projector for all to see, real estate experts said. As you can see here in the section detailing the collateral for this new loan of over Boston-dated dollars, the primary asset listed is the entire Coyote Pass property. However, the borrowers and signatories on the deed of trust are Kody Brown and Robyn Brown. By signing this, they effectively placed a lien on the entire property, including the parcels designated for the other wives, but made themselves the sole legal beneficiaries of the loan and the primary title holders. In simple terms, they borrowed money against an asset they only partially owned, and in the process, legally elevated their ownership claim above the other partners who had also invested in it. When Kody took the stand, this would be the focus of a brutal cross-examination. Meri's lawyer, Eleanor Vance, said, "Mr. Brown, you've testified that you always intended to give each of your wives their own parcel of land on Coyote Pass, correct?" Kody said, "Yes, of course. That was always the plan. We were going to be one big, happy family on the mountain," Vanso said. "One happy family. Yet when you and your legal wife, Robyn, refinanced your home, you used the entire property as collateral, did you not?"
Kody said,
"We had to. We needed the money for the family." "It was a financial decision," Vance said. "A financial decision that you made without consulting Meri Brown, without getting her signature, even though her money, her investment was tied up in that land," Kody said. "I am the head of this family. I make the financial decisions." "It's my responsibility," Vance said. "Is it also your responsibility to remove your first wife of years from the deeds? To leverage her assets for your own gain while giving her no legal recourse? Is that what the head of the household does, Mr. Brown? Or is that what a con artist does?" The courtroom would erupt. The judge would bang the gavel, but the point would have been made. They had used their legal status, the very status Meri had gifted them, to financially neuter her. The human element? Witness testimony. To bolster the claims of a deliberate freeze-out, Meri's team would need more than just numbers. They would need to show a pattern of behavior. This is where, in our speculative trial, things would get deeply personal. The first witness to provide this context would be a shock to everyone, Christine Brown. She would not be there to bash Kody, but to establish the way things were. She would testify about the family's financial practices in Lehigh and Las Vegas, confirming that before Robyn, major decisions were made by group consensus. Christine, her voice steady, but with a hint of sadness. "We used to have meetings, all of us. We'd sit in the living room, and we would talk about everything. Buying the Lehigh house, the move to Vegas.
We all had a say.
We'd vote. It wasn't always perfect, but we were a team. Meri, as the legal wife, often had the final sign-off on the paperwork, but the decision was made by the group Vance. And after, Miss Brown, after the legal marriage to Robyn, Christine sighs. The meeting stopped. Things just happened. We would find out after the fact the decision to buy Robyn's huge house in Flagstaff. That wasn't a group decision. We were just told it was happening. The family pot. It felt like it wasn't ours anymore. It felt like it was theirs, and we were just lucky to get a piece of it." Christine's testimony would be devastating. It would corroborate the timeline of Meri's exclusion and show it wasn't an isolated event, but a fundamental shift in the entire family's operational structure. But the most powerful testimony would come from Meri Brown herself. She would take the stand not as the weeping, broken woman from that couch, but as a composed, dignified survivor. Her lawyer would walk her through her year journey with Kody. She would talk about her initial financial contributions, working multiple jobs in the early years to support the family while the other wives raised the young children. She would establish her deep foundational investment. Then her lawyer would ask her about the divorce. Eleanor Vance. "Miss Brown, when Kody and Robyn came to you with the proposal to divorce so he could adopt her children, what were the specific promises they made to you?" Meri, her voice cracking with emotion for the first time. "They promised me. They swore to me that nothing would change. Kody looked me in the eyes and said, 'You will always be my first wife. This is just for the kids. It's a piece of paper.' Robyn held my hand and cried and said she would never, ever let this come between us, that our family structure was sacred. I believed them. I trusted them, Vance. And if they had not made those promises, if they had told you the truth, that they intended to close your joint accounts, rewrite the business contracts, and remove your name from the family property deeds, would you have signed those divorce papers? Meri looking directly at the jury, tears now freely flowing. Never in a million years. I would have never agreed to it. They asked for a sacrifice, and I gave it to them willingly. I didn't know I was signing away my entire life's work. I didn't know I was funding my own exile. This would be the emotional climax of the trial. Meri's testimony would tie the cold, hard numbers from the financial experts to the raw human betrayal of broken promises. It would transform the case from a dry financial dispute into a profound moral tragedy. Closing arguments and the weight. The closing arguments would summarize the two competing narratives. Kody and Robyn's lawyer would argue it was a tragic but simple case of a relationship ending, with the financial separation being a natural consequence, not a premeditated cause. He would paint Meri as a vindictive ex-wife looking for a final payday. Kody's lawyer, he love faded. Trust was broken. It's a sad story we see every day. The plaintiff wants you to believe this was a grand conspiracy, a plot worthy of a movie. The reality is far more mundane. It was a messy, painful separation, and now she wants someone to blame. But the blame lies not in fraudulent documents, but in broken hearts, and there is no financial compensation for that. Then Eleanor Vance would stand for Meri's final rebuttal. She would walk over to a large screen and put up two images side by side. On one side, the photo of the three of them on the couch. On the other hand, a copy of the Coyote Pass refinancing deed with only Kody and Robyn's names on it. Eleanor Vance, her voice ringing with conviction. The defense wants you to believe this is about a broken heart. Look at these two images. This is not about a broken heart. This is about a broken promise. A calculated, legally executed, broken promise. The defendants didn't just fall out of love with Meri Brown. They methodically stripped her of her assets, her power, and her legacy, using her love for their children as the key to unlock her life savings. They told her it was a piece of paper, but they used that piece of paper as a weapon and a shield. A weapon to seize control of the family finances and a shield to hide behind when she asked why she was being cast aside. This isn't a divorce case, Your Honor. This is a heist, and we are asking you to make them give back what they stole. The jury would then be dismissed to deliberate. The wait would be agonizing. Days would pass. The media would be in a frenzy. For Kody and Robyn, their entire empire and reputation would hang in the balance. For Meri, it was about a final, desperate plea for validation, a chance to have her truth be heard and believed after a decade of being silenced. The day the verdict came in, the courtroom would be packed. The air would be thick with tension.